Chair, you're on mute, Chair. Sorry. But just unmute your mic.
Oh, I've been on mute all along. Apologies, honorable members. Good afternoon. 2:30. We'll start our meeting. This is the meeting of the State Public Economy, which will be accompanied by its entities, which is the Saldanha Bay Development Industrial Zone, as well as Wesgro. We'll also be looking at the report of the Auditor General of the department and its entities. Now, this session started with it's a confidential session, which is it's an in-committee meeting, meaning that no members of the public nor the media is allowed at the meeting. Now, if I can just get an indication from the procedural officer, any apologies that we have received, Mr. Procedural Officer?
He's in another urgent meeting currently, Chair, so that's the only apology that I received for this meeting.
Thank you very much. Can I also just, something I've been overlooking in the meetings, just get an indication, although it is there on record of the people that are, of the members that are present, can I just get an indication of the members that are present?
Batlodi Maseko present, sir.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member.
Member Gilbert Barton present.
Thank you, Honorable Member.
Good afternoon, Chair. Derek America.
Thank you very much, Honorable.
Good afternoon, Chair. Sorry. Good afternoon, Chair of Medical Table. I'll be present in the meeting. That's Member Makamba Boje.
Oh, welcome, Honorable Member. Honorable Nkondlo as well, I can see you there. Now, what we are going to do then, honorable members, like because I know the session is for is from now, starting now 7:30 until 7:30. But obviously, we are always very cautious of time. There will be Auditor General's report. That means it will be for 3 bodies, which is the department and the 2 entities, as well as the report of the audit committees of the department as well as its 2 entities. So what I will normally do, I will just request that the Auditor General, in presenting their report as well as the audit committee, if they can just talk through the report without necessarily going to details, because I would like to regard the report as read by the members, and maybe the Auditor General can just raise those pertinent issues that they think that need our attention. So can I hand over to the Auditor General? Committee on Public Accounts for purposes of deliberating on the annual report of the Department of Economic Development and Tourism with its entities, which is the Saldanha Bay Industrial Development Zone, as well as the entity Wesgro. Present here is the Office of the Auditor General, and also the audit committees of the department, as well as the audit committees of the entities. So we are also having the entity itself, IDZ, as well as Wesgro. Now we are going to deliberate on the annual reports and also the Auditor General's report and the reports submitted to us by the audit committees. The manner in which we are going to deal with the report, we will deal with Section C and Section E of all the annual reports, that of the department, that of the IDZ, and that of Wesgro. Now, then we will also deal with Section E of the report of all the entities I've mentioned, including the department. This is an open meeting of the standing committee, meaning that it is open to the public and is also open to the media as well. And after we finish allowing members of the legislature and members of the committee to ask questions, we will allow members of the public, if there are any, to also ask questions on the issues that are raised. Now, before we may start, I don't know, HOD, is there any opening remarks you'd like to make in the absence of the minister? HOD.
Chair, thank you very much, and good afternoon, and good afternoon to all the honourable members. Chair, no, I think we're fine, and that we will be guided by your leading chair as to the order of deliberation, and our teams are ready. So over to you, Chair. Thank you very much.
Okay, the CEO of Wesgro. Is the CEO
yes,
present?
thank you. Yeah, I am here, Chair. Thank you very much. I have almost all of the Wesgro executive team and the finance team with me, and I believe we have our Vice Chairman, Mike Spicer, and I think David Green stayed with us from the Audit Committee component, so we are all present.
Okay, CEO of the IDZ.
Good afternoon, Chairperson. Yes, we're all accounted for on the call today at the meeting. I have my board chairperson, Dr. Stegman, as well as the committee chair of our Human Resource, Remuneration and Social and Ethics Committee. And I believe Paul is still on the line. I would just like to table an apology from our Chief Operations Officer, Doug Southgate. He's had a family emergency to attend to and is not available for today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, CEO. There you have it, honorable members. Can I have an indication of ask questions? Honorable Bartman, send this up.
Chair, can I go ahead or you?
Yes.
Before, Chair.
Okay, just before you, Honorable Bartman, Honorable Nkonjo.
No, can I check, because we actually have almost 3 organizations here. Do we follow the same route of asking all of them at the same time on Section C? Is that okay? Thank you.
Yeah, it's better. It saves time also. Yeah, just ask right across. If it's to the department, ask to the department, to the IDZ, ask, and then if it's also to Wesgro, ask. Then when you get the response, we get the responses right across. Honorable Batman.
Chair, are we allowed to ask on E right now? Because mine's on part E.
No. Let's start with C. Let's do that in that order. Only those members who want to ask question on C now. If you've got only on E, Honorable Batman, please just bear with us until we reach there. Okay, Honorable Ngonjo.
No, thank you, Chair. Let me then hit with my section C questions. Chair, on Wesgro, the risk on the financial viability that has been mentioned in their strategic risks. I just want to understand, and I would assume without preempting them, that the situation may even be dire given where we are, that at this point, what are the chances of this situation changing? Because I think when one looks at also their financials, you can see that the biggest chunk of what keeps them is actually government transfers or grants. Does this have anything to do with the business model? Is there a conversation of changing the business model of Wesgro? I'm just trying to find out what are some of the conversations in the organization about responding to this particular risk that they've mentioned. And then on page 72 on their BBBE, I see they indicate that they have submitted to the commission. Just wanted to understand what is their current level of compliance in as far as BBBE is concerned, if they can give an indication in that regard. And then moving to section C of the IDZ, Chair, I must say, when it comes to the board profile and complexion, one can actually say, I think the EXCO of IDZ is way ahead in terms of, ticking the right boxes and the attempt, to try to be as a diverse team as possible. And perhaps an indication from the board of how are they considering this matter, especially around issues of gender in the board of the IDZ, given the current environment. And then in terms of their BBBE on page 61, I'm not sure because one, if you look at that column and the application through the 5 questions, there is all no's in that question or in that table. And what does that mean in terms of their application or alignment of BBBE based on the questions of measure that are in that table? And then another one for the IDZ is on the corporate social investment. And I just want to understand, is there CSI, where is it located? Is it done as a special project? How does it function in the entity? Is there policy, and are these programs once-off things, that gets to be done as and when, or there is a sort of a focused CSI under which a function or a unit of the entity, and what has been spent on social responsibility at this point from the entity. And then my last one, Chair, is on the department. And I think on the department, I see, I think it's on page 139 in section C, that the attendance of the GovCom, I think both the director and the acting director of business regulation have not necessarily, I think the acting director attended once and nothing from the director. Perhaps there's explanations to this in terms of participation in the GovCom. And then next one there, what is the meaning of the risk that they've mentioned there of leadership in page 180? If they can just indicate what does that mean and what kind of mitigating sort of interventions that they are putting in place in as far as that is concerned. And when you read, I think subsequent to that, about the roles that they play as a department, they speak about the support to SMMEs. And one would just be interested whether the department has actually considered, or if it does actually look at from a RAND point of view, that is the money it spends on SMMEs versus your big commercial entities in terms of investment and in terms of its programs. If one were to say in 100%, what will be that in terms of this particular department, both in terms of its own programs, but also for the departmental wide? And I'm saying departmental wide because one would assume part of its role is to help the other departments around, unlocking through their own efforts and their own spend, SMME opportunities. So I'm trying to understand that, Chair. And the last one is on the fraud cases. There are 6 cases, if I understand. If we can just get an understanding and an update of where are those cases and the details along those cases. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Nkondlo. I see there's Honorable Makamba Pocha.
Okay, thank you, Chairperson. My first question is on page 142 regarding the fraud and fraud and corruption. I take notice that every department that comes before us contain the same statement on their annual reports appearing on page 141 of this report regarding having an approved fraud and corruption prevention plan. Now, this sounds like a proactive strategy rather than a reactive one, at least on paper. However, when it comes to reality, almost each and every department report or cases that have been taking place in their departments. Now, it raises questions whether those so-called fraud and corruption prevention mechanisms, which are said to be put in place, are effective enough. Can the department please explain the cases that appear in top table of page 142 in the following manner? Number 1, what did each case involve? 2, what are the current statuses of each case, whether they are resolved or not? 3, if they are resolved, what are the outcomes? And then lastly, further, with regards to one case which is now closed and appearing on the second table there, what was the nature of the irregularity involved and how was that case decided? And my second question is also on part C under governance. On page 61 on the annual report, in the table under triple BEE, compliance performance information, in the first 5 column of the table under the discussion section, the entity provides the same response throughout, that it still needs to draft a policy in order to incorporate the requisite criteria appearing on the left side of the table. So the question there is, how far is the entity in terms of drafting and implementing such policies? Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Makamba Pocha. Now, can we get the responses first from the department?
Yes, Chair, sorry, I just needed to unmute. Chair, I'm going to start with the questions raised by Honourable Nkondlo. On page 139, she raises the issue of the director and the assistant director of the business, the organization, what is actually the business regulation unit. We did have a resignation there of Advocate Searle at the beginning of that, towards the end of the 2019 financial year. And then we obviously had an acting person, and that kind of was the delay. But I can assure now that all of the GovCom members are fully implemented, and that non-attendance has been corrected. On page 180, regarding the risk of leadership that was mentioned, I think that was a risk which was identified. I think it was 180 that Mrs. Mkondo made a point on, Honorable Mkondo. Sorry, support to SMMEs. Of course, the department, as a complete program and a sub-program that deals with enterprise development and the support to SMMEs. And a bulk of that program's monies goes to SMME development and SME support. And we report that on that quite frequently within the standing committees. And the results of those are also in the annual report reflected. There was a second question being asked, and that is, how do we help other departments in relation to SMMEs? And there is a very strong interdepartmental relationship between ourselves and the Department of the Premier, and jointly we've developed the preferential procurement or the economic procurement policy that enables small medium enterprises to be ready to take on government tenders. We've also in our department helped, together with the Department of the Provincial Treasury, help firms to register on the database, the supplier database, so that they are ready for application of tenders. And that is something that we do in our department all the time. With regards to the fraud cases, which was the comment and also raised by Member Nkamba, we had in the, and I just want to get to the actual page, it's page 142. Yeah, we had at the beginning of the financial year, we had one case, and then during the financial year, we added 3 cases. Of those cases, one case was closed because it was a duplicate case. The case was reported via a whistleblower, and the case was also reported via a departmental referral. And so that case was taken off, and that's the one case that you could see there that was closed, and that the other 3 cases, the status of those cases are as follows. The first case, which was a closed case, other than the duplicated case, that case was a matter where we followed a competitive bidding process to appoint a service provider for service. Afterwards, after the bid was awarded, there was an allegation made that the appointed service provider didn't stipulate their intention to subcontract part of the work. I then, and through the department, we referred the matter to our forensic investigative unit, and the investigation revealed that the service provider misrepresented to the department when it indicated it would not be utilizing subcontractors on the project. However, when forensics went into the matter in detail, there was insufficient evidence to confirm whether the misrepresentation was made intentionally in order to deceive the department. And at the end of that, the PFS recommended that the department consider whether the failure to take the appropriate action at the time when it was made aware of the subcontractor resulted in possibly irregular expenditure. And it was also recommended that in consultation with legal services, we exercise our powers in terms of Regulation 14 of the Preferential Procurement Act, which in fact we did. And that matter is now still under legal review with our legal services department. And so that matter, even though it is closed from the forensic investigative unit side, it is still a matter that we need final closure on the listing, on whether we're going to list this potential bidder or this bidder as somebody that we need to take further action with. That is that particular case. On the second case, there was a duplicate case, as I said, and so that matter was closed because it was a matter that was already being investigated. On the third case, so these are the cases that were still open as at the end of March. 2020. That cases was the first one was where we as the department had a referral to the investigative unit, and we reported from the department side that there could be a possible conflict of interest in the awarding of a contract to a service provider. And when after that contract was awarded, one of the project managers who had been involved in the project, and he was on contract, he then left the employ and he joined the service provider. And of course, we were concerned that there may have been a conflict of interest there. So the investigation that was carried out revealed that the contract with the service provider would have terminated on the 31st of March, but it was extended for a period of 3 months until the end of June. After the former manager motivated for the extension due to delays in the procurement in further phases of the project. It appears that the service provider continued to render the services to the department between July 2019 and August 2019 in the absence of a SLA. The failure to ensure that a valid SLA was in place in this period may have exposed the department to legal risk. But following this, there was a motivation for this natural continuation or a limited bid to be implemented of a new phase of the project and to avoid delays. And then the forensic investigative unit, in their investigation, they found that and I just want to read it exactly according to the evidence I have here in front of me, that whereas discussions on the offer of employment between the former project manager and the service provider took place after the awarding of the contract on the 12th of August 2019, the forensic investigative unit could find no evidence that the employment offer with the service provider could have been used as an inducement to award the limited bid contract. The investigation further could not find any demonstrable evidence of misrepresentation in the capacity gap analysis relating to the technical requirements, and the documentary evidence available confirmed that the former project manager exercised a right to pursue further employment after being unsuccessful in the application of employment in September 2019 with the department, and after procurement and contractual processes with the service provider have completed. In view of the situation prior to the award of the tender, when the service provider rendered services to the department between July and August, in the absence of SLA, the FIU recommended that the department ensure that all contractual relationships are managed in terms of a signed agreement with the service providers, even in exceptional circumstances, as in this case, where services continued after expiry of a contract in order to address the risk. So again, in this case, there was no evidence found that our alleged conflict of interest decision was in fact so, and FIU then completed that, and the recommendation was there that we needed to tighten up of our service level agreements when we go forward. The third case that is still open relates to a case that a former official of the department was involved in a process, and the investigation revealed that the correct procurement process was followed in terms of the department's financial policy for both bids. However, PFS observed that the official was the project manager on the project linked to the bids prior to their resignation, which created a perceived advantage towards their company and an unfairness to the other bidders. PFS noted that the department's finance policy does not specifically provide guidance regarding former employees bidding for contracts, particularly in instances where they may have had access to confidential bid information. PFS recommended the department, after consultation with legal services, consider amending the finance policy to restrict former employees from bidding for contracts in which they were initially involved in or had access to confidential bid information, which may give them a real or perceived advantage. So on the cases that is listed, we had all of those cases investigated. There is one case that is still outstanding, and a new case that was registered, and those are still under investigation. So at the time of the report, those cases have not been finalized. Thank you, Chair. So those are fraud cases. I think the risk of leadership only related to the fact that the contract of the HOD came to an end in April of 2019, and of course the replacement process is still ongoing. That I know is something that is ongoing, and of course there's always a risk. But I am involved in an extended contract period until the end of March, it seems, and I'm sure that is something that that is going to be taken up further in discussions with myself and the minister with regards to a leadership continuation. I think I've also covered Honourable Member Mkambe's questions on the fraud and corruption on page 142, and all of those matters are in fact handled. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fourie. Wesgro, CEO.
Yes, thanks very much, Chair. So I believe there were 3 questions for us. I will take the first one and the third, and I'll leave the second to our CFO, who's on the call as well. So the first one was on the risks listed on page 71, and the question from Honourable Nkondlo about the particular one on the continued financial viability of Wesgro. It's important to note that these are very kind of high-level systemic risks for the agency. I don't, they're not the kinds of risks that you fully mitigate or put to bed. They're probably baked into the system, but they obviously do need to be continually managed. And just to remind the members, they include maintenance of relationship with stakeholders, deteriorating South African investment climate, ineffective knowledge retention and cross-selling, pandemic-related risks, regulatory risks, and digital transformation. But the one the Honourable Member honed in on was the viability of Wesgro financially. So Wesgro is a 3C public entity in the PFMA, which means we're a sort of delivery agent for the province, but with a model that's very much private sector led through the Wesgro board, some of whom have joined us on this meeting today. And that's a fairly robust and long-lasting model. We're actually, this year is our 40th anniversary year. So we're looking forward to inviting the members of SCOPA to some kind of celebration when we are able to later in the year. But that makes us the oldest entity of our kind in the country. And although we do flag this financial viability risk because we take note of the deteriorating fiscal climate in the country, and we have some robust conversations with our major funders, the biggest being the province via DDAT, and we actually just did our PGN Tech 2 budget engagements this week. But of course, our second biggest funder is the City of Cape Town. And we have a variety of funding sources from across different government departments, but also from some private sector players. So the members of SCOPA will know about our route development work that we call Cape Town Air Access, and that project is, I think we calculated for every 4 rand of public sector funding that goes into that project, we crowd in 1 rand of private sector funding. So there are programs that we work on where we secure private sector funding as well. But at its heart, Wesgro is a provincial public entity scheduled in the PFMA, and that does mean we have to continually make the case for delivery against funding, and I can report that the PGM Tech engagement broadly went very well, considering the difficult fiscal climate. This is a risk that we, as I said, will have to manage every year, but I don't believe is anything near a major concern for the agency. It just requires constant attention. The second question was on page 72 on triple BEE, which I'll leave to the CFO, and just quickly answer the question on our policies from Honourable Makamba Botcha. Our policies are certainly substantial and comprehensive. We update them on an annual basis, but we're currently doing a kind of one-off review of governance and all of the policies concerned. I'm sure the board members on the call would reflect on just how much time the board and the subcommittees of Wesgro spend keeping the policies up to date. So I don't believe there's any weaknesses in that system. But Chair, I will leave that third question to the CFO.
Thank you very much, CEO.
Thank you, CEO, and good afternoon to the honourable members. Colleague, CFO, although through the Accountant General of the Provincial Treasury, the triple BEE compliance was ruled as not yet in scope, at Wesgro we had initiated the process, so we continued with the process. And based on the process, obviously because we're a government entity, the ownership component is not applicable. And on the enterprise supplier development component, we are 60% compliant. And on the socio-economic development, we are 100% compliant. And on the managerial control component, we are 40% compliant. Where we have a big issue where we are non-compliant is on the skills development component. And the reason for that is not because we're not spending on skills development, it's because we are not currently registered through a SETA. And the reason for that is because of how diverse our mandates are. We needed to first identify which SETA do we want to link up with, because through our mandate, we've got investment promotion, trade, tourism, and film. And that complexity indicated that we didn't quite fit specifically with each of the various SETAs. And because of that, they could not allocate us points on anything that we had spent on skills development. The current engagements that we have agreed that we will link ourselves with the investment promotion SETA, and we are currently in the process of registering through that SETA, so that by the time triple BE is reviewed, we are then also compliant on the skills component, which is quite significant because it's 25% of the BE score. So we really want what we spend to count. Thank you.
Thank you very much, CFO. There was IDZ.
Chair, sorry, before IDZ, if I could just come in, it's again the HOD. It's a point I didn't make 100% clear on Honourable Member Nkamba Botchi's question, and that was, I mean, she referred to the fact that we have fraud and fraud and prevention policies in place, and yet there are so many cases shown. None of the cases that we have referred to the fraud investigated unit was proven fraud, and I think it is important for us to note that one of the mitigating vehicles against or that we use to prevent fraud is the utilization of investigations from our forensic investigative units. And I just wanted to clarify that point. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thanks, HOD.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. To the questions I'm going to ask, the question on considering gender on the board to go to our board chairperson, Dr. Stegman. Dale to answer the question on referring to page 61 and the BEE compliance performance information there, and then I will answer the question on the CSI social responsibility. Thank you.
Thanks, Kasifas. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Honourable Member Nkondlo, for the compliments on the board and EXCO composition. As you would know, the composition is something we've been driving quite seriously, and particularly the gender side of things. On the board, we have a bit of a challenge sometimes because the majority are nominated by our institutional members on the board, whether that be the DTIC, Transnet TNPA, or IDC, or the municipality, as the case might be. But it's a continuous search on our side to make sure that we have the right balance of skill and other compositions which is necessary for the board to fulfill its functions. And particularly at the times when there are changes in terms and the like, and obviously the stage of where the IDZ currently finds itself. Thank you very much. Over to Kasifa.
Thanks, JC. Dale?
Thank you, Kasifa. Afternoon, everyone, and thank you, honourable members, for the question. I think there were two similar questions relating to the BEE compliance. So previously we had a B certificate which expired in December of 2020. At that stage, we approached Provincial Treasury to ascertain if we can continue with the process of getting a new B certificate. And we were informed that the DTI and the National Treasury are currently embarking on a plan to determine or to get a policy together to have government become compliant in terms of the applicable regulation. So as it stands today, the management team, we are in regular contact with the Provincial Treasury to ascertain if we should continue with the process of developing a framework and a policy and then going forward with a new B certificate. And at this stage, we are still waiting on guidance from the DTI and the National Treasury. Thank you.
Thank you, Dale. To the question on page 61 related to our social responsibility, Member Nkondlo is quite correct to identify that there is no stated CSI policy for the company because we are of the view that we cannot have a policy until we are financially self-sustaining because all of our social and socio-economic development work falls within the development programs unit, and that is funded on a proposal basis where we are successful with applications for funding. So it would be very difficult for us to have a policy right now until we are in a more secure financial position, to put it holistically. Reflecting on the year under review, we have mentioned some on the activities that we've taken. We do this in conjunction with the municipality because they are the custodians in terms of civic need and identifying that also with the Western Cape government, particularly through the Department of Social Development, through the structure of the WASA, so the whole of society approach. But I would want to add that after the year under review for 2020, what we've embarked on and is a high school program. And the members would kindly remember the report that we tabled on the Innovation Campus on the 11th of September. And a subset of that Innovation Campus project is about readying youth for the digital skills that this industry will require in the future. So in 2020, we initiated and successfully concluded a teacher development program where 18 mathematics teachers from grade 8 and 9 over 9 high schools and primary schools in the Saldanha Bay area completed and were certified in dynamic software, which is very pivotal for the digital delivery of mathematics on the new curriculum that we have developed in partnership with the Department of Education. So in the next year, you will see more reference to this project in our annual reports. Thank you.
Thank you very much, CEO. Honorable members, are there any follow-up questions on C. If there are no further questions, honorable members, can we then move? Is that a follow-up, Honorable Makamba Boja?
Yes, Chairperson, thank you very much.
On section C.
Yes, my question is directed at the CFO who responded on the drafting of the policy in question. So I want to know, is there a time frame that she can maybe provide us in terms of what will be the turnaround time for that implementation? Thank you.
CFO, which entity, Honorable Makama Boya?
It's ITZ.
Okay.
Saldanha.
Okay. CEO?
So yes, it's CEO, not CFO. But yeah, so on the policy, look, we have a objective and a priority to reach financial break even as per our shareholders compact with the province by the 1st of April 2023. That is taking into consideration all of the market effects pre and post-COVID, and we're committed to achieving that priority. And whilst achieving that financial and commercial sustainability, also continuing with the development programs that we are doing in the community, specifically focus on local SME development and skills development and contractor development, sorry. Thank you.
Thanks, CEO. Honorable members, I would want us now to then move to section E of the report. Honorable Bartman, Honorable America, can we go on then in that order so far? Honorable Bartman. Honorable Nkonklo.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, on DDAT, I just firstly want to congratulate them for their clean audit and also just to thank them for including the recommendations of the committee in terms of the notes that they've added to the annual report, including the note on impairment, which we've also gone through detail in previous SCOPA meetings. I wanted to find out on part E, page 261, regarding the CTI-CC investment. It has been made a note there on that page that the impact of COVID will have an impact on the investment, and I just like the HOD to please elaborate on that because there's not much information on that particular point. Then to Saldanha Bay on pages 118, 119, and 120. When we look at the respective grants that have been allocated, you will find that there are interest that has been accrued on some, but not on others. And I just wanted to find out what is the difference between the interest that we receive on some and not others, because they all look more or less like the same type of grants or financial type of instruments. Then on page 121, the security amount for Saldanha Bay has almost tripled. And I just wanted to find out for specific reasons regarding that. And then page 123, I think, I could be wrong, but I think there's a printing error. Above the financial assets, you'll see there it says March 2020 and March 2019, separating the two years, but then on the columns above the amortization and the total, you'll also see 2020 and 2019. So I just want to find out just a bit of an explanation of how we should read that table. Then in terms of Wesgro, the first question is more regarding a note from the audit report and so on. It was indicated that some of obviously the internal controls were deficient regarding requesting foreign technician I wanted to find out whether the Auditor General, they've received any recommendations from the Auditor General, whether...
Honorable Patman,
Yes, Chair?
can you
Yes,
please
Chair.
start your question on Wesgro because you broke up a little bit.
Apologies. My question on Wesgro, in the audit report, there were a note regarding deficiencies in the internal controls, and I just wanted to find out what recommendations have they received from the Auditor General regarding fixing that in the future, and what will they be putting in place regarding it, because it's regarding the companies that have not made declarations. And then also I just want to find out on page 113 of their annual report, their insurance have also increased by almost threefold. And I just wanted to find out the reason for that, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Patman. Honorable America.
Thank you, Chair. My questions relate to Wesgro, and I'd like to have about 4 questions that I'd like to pose. And I will start with page 113. 113, it is noted that the Chief Marketing Officer, Ms. Judy Lane, resigned, and her remuneration is listed. But just below that, we have a Chief Marketing Officer, Ms. Margaret Whitehouse. So I make the assumption that Ms. Whitehouse replaced Ms. Lane, and the income or her remuneration was for a period of the financial year, because it is very low in comparison with the others. So maybe that can just be clarified for me. And then furthermore, Chair, the following page 14, point 17, it is noted that consulting fees increased considerably, so perhaps, there's an explanation. How come the consulting fees almost increased threefold over the financial year? And I'm sure, it will be forthcoming. And then, Chair, on the following page, that is page 115, workshops and seminars also, increased by more than 100%. What has given almost close to 100%? What's given rise to the increase in workshops and seminars for this particular financial year? And then further question, Chair, is on page 117 under contingent liabilities. See that they listed, or the explanatory note state that contingent liability exists in relation to the retention of surplus funds. Because, retention of surplus funds, why is it being classified in this sense as a contingent liability? Because don't get a sense that a liability exists that need to be met in the future. And then lastly, Chair, on the same page just below that, minimum payments due. If you look at the explanatory note, I don't know, maybe there's just a typographical error because the two amounts doesn't add up to 965,000 Rand. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Honorable America. Honorable Ngonjo.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe let me start with IDZ, because I only have, I think, 2 clarity-seeking questions with them. I just want them to explain to me what is public contributions? I think there's 150,000. I think it's on almost about 3 pages, I think page 87 and others. If they can just indicate what's the composition of those. And then I think on page 91, I saw interest, which I think it's a minus. Does it mean it's paid interest or interest received by the entity? If they can clarify me on those. And then, Chair, on the department, I just want to understand on program 6 of the department. I think on the transfers and subsidies to municipality, I think it's on page 224. I see the underspending, and I just want to get some clarity of what could have been some of the challenges in terms of those transfers, because I saw, I think, in the subsequent pages and notes that it referred to, I think, issues of some particular projects. But if they can just explain that to me. And also, I think in program 5, I think it's on page 231, a reference to underspending there relates to change in economic policy, which I think it means it affected a budget. If they can sort of elaborate on that, and how was that sort of managed from the department, but obviously consequences thereof in terms of what is being reported is the elements of underspending in that. And then also in page 231, I think in the note there's a mention of staff which was at 231, but at the end of the reporting year, there was 201. Does it mean there were exit of almost 30 staff members? Is that the case if one reads what is there? And if so, although we're not talking about the HR, what could be some of the reasons behind those huge numbers, if they are from the department side? And then for me, Chair, also in page 243 of the department, I see under 2. I think it's section 2.4, there's a mention of Mersita funding, which has been expended to the Provincial Revenue Fund. If they can indicate what does that mean, because on one hand, I think earlier on it indicates that it's reported that the funding that was received for some skills development program, but then I'm not sure whether it's the same amount that was then expended to the PRF. So if I can get those clarities from the department. And then lastly, Chair, my questions to Wesgro. All right, I think with Wesgro, Chair, just with Wesgro on page, I think it's 111, that is 111 in my ebook. I just want to understand in terms of the operating lease liability, what is this fixed annual the agreement on the fixed annual escalation of the operating list that they have with the Reserve Bank? And because I'm trying to understand that figure of 306 in the previous reporting year and the 516, if they can just explain that to me. I think I'm covered by Honorable America on the consulting fees, because I also pick up that, 2.9 and in 113 and also 27.5. And I would want to understand what are the areas I think Wesgro as an entity utilizes consultants on. And then in page, I think it's 117, Chair, just bear with me until I get to that page. Page 117 on the contingent liabilities, Chair, I think there is 1.4 contingent liabilities mentioned in page 117, I'm sorry. If further clarification can be given, because it just says contingent liability exists in relation to the retention of the surplus funds, maybe just to explain that in simple layman's terms. And then, Chair, on page 118, I just want to understand these incentives, because I see it indicates there that the incentives of 1.48 to Singapore Airline for the Cape access route and the 35 million to North America route. Can you please just explain what this is? Because I'm assuming it's part of the agreement for these airlines to operate. Is that what it means? And who is actually paying for this? Is it Wesgro through the department who has to pay these airlines? And yeah, if maybe just a rationale can be provided for one to sort of better understand, you know, those transactions. Yeah, I think, oh, the last one, Chair, is on it's on page 124 on the SEZ incubation. So I just want to understand, I think it's just a confirmation that SEZ's cost, because I'm assuming SEZ has incubated in Wesgro, so its costs, and am I correct to read in page 124 that it means, you know, I think it's 20 point something million rands have been the cost of the administration and all related costs for the Saldanha, for the Atlantis SEZ, whilst it's within Wesgro until it goes on its own. Is that the correct understanding? And if on page 128 we can get the list of these municipalities projects and the results thereof. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Ngonzo. That was a very long last question. I see Honorable America, you coming back?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just, omitted to ask an additional question to Wesgro. And that is on page 114, and it relates to audit fees. Now, inclusive in the amounts listed, there's separated, one for external and one for internal audit. Now, perhaps I need some clarity whether that external, is it an external party who rendered internal auditing services to the entity, and is it more cost effective to have an external party to render that particular function, and perhaps an explanation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, honorable members. Can we have responses? Let's start with the department.
Yes, Honourable Chair, thank you very much. I'll take the question of Honourable Bartman, and then the questions raised by Honourable Nkondlo with regards to transfers and subsidies to the municipalities, and the MERSITA funding that Rashid Tofi will take. And then the question on the change in policy on Programme 5, page 231, that Joanne Johnston will take. And then Ms. Judith will take the question on the staffing. I think Honourable Bartman asks a very, very pertinent question. And you would notice, Chair and Honourable members, that we reflected in the financial statement that the effects of COVID on the CTICC, we reflected that as a post-year end adjustment or report. And the reason why we did that, because COVID hit us in March 2020, and the real effects of COVID wasn't felt at the time when we obviously did the financial reports. But what is clear is that COVID and the effects of the pandemic has significantly impacted not just the national conferencing and meetings and incentives and events calendars, but also the global calendars. And so for CTICC, the effects of COVID is very, very devastating. And in fact, the board is currently reviewing its mitigation measures and mitigation proposals that it needs to be put in place. It has also engaged with the two major shareholders, the City of Cape Town and the Western Cape government, to alert them of the trading cautions that is being envisaged by the board and the various options that are being considered. Chair, at this stage, the board is in the process of reviewing those options, and I unfortunately do not have more information than that, but it is a situation that is worrying for us. I mean, not only for CTICC, but in the context of this standing committee on public accounts. It's important that it's raised here, but it's very important for us for the broader economic growth potential of this region. International tourism is a major contributor to our economy, and I'm sure Wesgro can talk a lot about that. And going forward, we are going to do everything in our power to make sure we get a balanced approach between the demands of the need to curb the epidemiological threat of COVID, but also that we need to balance the effects of the economic issues on the livelihoods of people, and that has to become a very fine balance that we need to take forward. I hope that answers a member Bartman's question on CTICC and that post-year end a report that we wanted to do. I'm now going to hand over to Mr. Tofi to do the question on transfers and subsidies to municipalities and the question of the Masita funding. Then Ms. Johnson is going to come in with the program 5 underspending, and then Ms. Julies will do the staff numbers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, HOD. I shall attempt to answer, and I might ask the CFO to add, just to clarify as well, please. On the two issues of underspending, Member Nkontlo, first of all, so the first one, the explanation there is that in our program 3, we had some underspending due to not filling of some vacancies, but also our halal cluster and supply chain program was somewhat delayed. And so that request from PT to roll over that money was not accepted. So some saving had to be declared. But the good news is we were able to complete that project in this financial year with existing funding. And similarly for program 6, delays were experienced due to not filling of vacancies. And we were then able to complete the cycle route infrastructure project. I think it was a project in Swellendam this year with existing budgets. In terms of the GTAC and Masita funding, now I'm not sure if I understood the question correctly, but the GTAC funding, which was earmarked for spending on, just hold on one second, I just want to look at my notes. And these were earmarked originally for a project that we did complete. So the project was entirely complete, but the additional money which was unspent on GTAC is in fact to be used for the monitoring and evaluation phase. And we will be starting to spend that money in February this year. And it's quite an onerous project where we have to hire additional staff to call back a lot of the candidates who received the funding. And that program will begin in February of this year. So CFO, I wonder if you could handle, if you don't mind, the issue of the Masita funding, please. Thank you.
Yes, good afternoon, CFO for Economic Development. Maybe just to explain the note 3 that the honourable member spoke about. So it's in note 3, you actually find an accounting entry. So the way the MOSITA policy works in all the SETA funding is that the department are not able to spend that money until it has been voted into the department's main appropriation by the Provincial Treasury. So what you're seeing coming through in note 3 is the department firstly transferring the funds into the Provincial Revenue Fund. And what will now happen in our 2021 financial year, the 1493 will be appropriated back into DDAT's appropriation, and we then are able to use that money for our artisan development program. So within this financial year, currently we're using that funding towards our artisan development program. So as I said, note 3 is merely an accounting entry to disclose how that transaction will come through within the PRF or via the PRF to the department's books. Thank you.
Joanne, can you raise the issue on the program 5?
Yes, so with regards to the savings generated in program 5, the bulk of the savings is essentially the HR savings. It's linked to COE. But with respect to the specific question around the change of economic policy, so if we recall, it would have been the sort of new leadership that would come in place. And generally, the department sort of anticipates that there is shifts or refinements of the economic policy and strategy. So we had budgeted for that. But at the end, under the guidance of the minister, we essentially did a lot of the work in-house. So we utilized internal capacity and conducted our own economic consultations across the economy to develop the strategy. So that resulted in savings in that the minister didn't necessarily want something that involved at that time sort of external consultants and research capacity. So thanks.
Thank you, Joanne. Cheryl, can you do the one on the staff numbers?
Sure. Thank you so much, Honourable Nkondlo. The number of the staffing that reduced to 201 relates actually to the contract expiry of staff members. If you'll see in the HR part, it's reflected in the HR part, and also some of the resignations that came through during that period. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. That's the end of our round of questions that we responded to.
Thank you very much, HOD. Can we get the IDZ?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. On the question of the interest on some but not on others, I would ask Herman, and also on the formatting error, Herman. And then maybe then also, I think just in one go, also deal with Member Nkondlo's questions on the public contribution and negative interest. And then the last question on the security that increased year from year, I would ask Adinda, our Executive for Transaction and Investor Support, to answer that. Thank you.
Good afternoon, honourable members. In terms of the questions, the interest question, for every special project that we get funding for, there's certain terms and conditions, and then we recognise the income in terms of those terms and conditions. And in certain instances, the interest can be recognised as our own income, and in certain instances it needs to go to the project itself. Where it goes to the project itself, then you will see that there's interest recognised, and where there's not, it means that it will be recognised in our income. On the disclosure issue on page 123, that is disclosed in terms of GRAP 4, and I agree with you, honourable member, that the table is misleading, as the heading, the 2020 and the 2019 heading is on top, and then we also talk about the the information for the year 2020 and 2019 at the bottom. And if you remove those headings, then it will be not so misleading, because the one section talks specifically to the year ending 2020 on the financial assets and the financial liabilities for that year, and then directly below that as a comparable figure, the March 2019 numbers for financial assets and financial liabilities. Then on the question with regards to the public contributions, that relates to the infrastructure program, where we, as part of the infrastructure program, we had to register a servitude, and at year end we had to value that servitude to market value, and that revalue of that servitude created an income as an accounting income into the accounting records, and not actual income into the income of the company, and that's based on the accounting principles, and that's why it's recognized as that. And then lastly, just on the negative interest, Honourable Member, I'm not sure with the page, but I assume page number 89, because there's negative interest there, but just to assure you that we haven't paid any interest to anyone, it's merely interest income, which is reflected negatively, and I hope that answers the questions.
Thanks, Herman. Addenda? Sorry, yes. Sorry.
Okay. Thanks, Kashifa. Thanks, Herman. On the question of security, we had a security incident at our Saldanha Bay office, which meant that we had to bring on some additional security measures specifically for the offices. We also included our SME collab also into our security. And lastly, we do foresee that our security will continue to increase in the next few years to come, as we roll out our ISPS and our customs controlled area protocols. Yeah, that would explain the increase that you would see for last year.
Thank you, Addenda. Thanks. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you very much. I think then can we have responses from Wesgro?
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. We're going to split the duties between the CFO and I. I will deal with Honourable Nkondlo's, then Honourable Bartman's, then Honourable America, and I will flag some for the CFO to answer. So many of the questions relate to increases in amounts such as what we pay for our lease, what we pay for workshops and seminars, consulting fees. Almost all of those, insurance, for example, all of the members ask questions on that, and almost all of the answer is related to the fact that we were incubating the Atlanta Special Economic Zone, as Honourable Nkondlo pointed out, in the period. That is a substantial new operation with new kind of overheads and using new space in the building, hence the lease and the deposit we had to pay for that. At the early stage, the Atlanta SEZ was obviously very intensively using consultants and workshops and seminars. So it's a common answer to most of those questions. There were other examples where Wesgro was stepping up in the workshops and seminar space with new events such as the Africa Halal Week, and we did create some new platforms pre-COVID to do the promotion work that we do. But again, even workshops and seminars on North America was largely linked to the Atlanta Special Economic Zone. The page 118, the airlines question. So I mentioned earlier the private sector component of that partnership. It is fulfilling a substantial financial kind of role that money is playing. We do earmark the private sector contributions for direct support of airlines. So a large portion of that would come straight from the money that we're receiving from our private sector partners. But even on the public sector side, the project's co-funded by Western Cape, City of Cape Town, AXA itself, South African Tourism, Cape Town Tourism. So we've spread the burden across the teams when it comes to the operational costs of that project, as well as the marketing and the support for individual airlines. It's also worth noting that this project, in the years it's been running, have doubled the number of new non-stop flights to, or rather double the number of non-stop flights to Cape Town up until the COVID crisis. And we're fairly confident that we'll be able to get almost all of those, if not all of them, back as we drive the recovery. But the overwhelming majority of those flights have come on the back of a business case that we've made by showing the benefits to the airline of flying to the destination. There were 2 exceptions that are listed in the annual report where we matched that business case with an element of financial support. It's usually structured around marketing and spending sort of alongside the airline's marketing to make sure the flight is full. But certainly if you look at the proportion of new flights landed that received financial support, it's extremely low, and certainly much lower than any kind of equivalent destinations globally where the business is largely driven by incentives. So the annual report reflects the position that it was in this financial year. Since COVID hit, we did renegotiate that North America route incentive. So we now have 2 additional clauses. The one reduces the commitment down to 5 million this year, and that was based on the fiscal realities that we explained. And the other is there's an automatic termination if there's no service from one of those carriers this year. So we did the work of covering the public purse in the structuring of that contract. The question on municipal funding from Honourable Nkondlo on page 128. So we always say there's kind of 3 approaches to working in the municipalities that kind of kick in at various stages with Wesgro. The first and most important one is that we're the agency for the entire province, both across our economic and our tourism mandates. That means we're responsible for promoting tourism across the whole of the Western Cape. We're responsible for landing investment across the whole of the Western Cape, driving exports from every municipality, landing film production. And we've spent many hours in front of this Parliament reflecting on our efforts to land our work right across the province. And we're available to any municipal economic team that needs our support in their kind of external tourism and economic work. But of course, as you've seen over the years, we've battled with the size of the province and with the size of our headcounts to get full coverage of the province. It's a big province and there's lots of demands. So we've established a district unit of 2 managers that are dedicated to the non-metro municipalities in the province. They don't do any work within the metro. And they're one of those parts of government that's actually, in some sense, benefited from this strange situation we're in with the COVID crisis, because their work has become entirely remote and virtual, and it means they can do many more engagements across the municipalities working like this. The third component and the third level is those municipal contracts that appear on page 128. There are 5 municipalities in this financial year. In Saldanha, we ran a dedicated export intervention for companies in Saldanha to help them grow their exports. We also did a locations piece with our film team, promoting Saldanha as a film location. In Matsakama, we're working with them on an aquaculture project, and we helped write a prospectus to land a new investor there. In George, we worked on an investment promotion prospectus and ran a dedicated campaign for investing in George. Knysna is where we stepped in on the municipality's request to take over Visit Knysna, the LTO, on a short-term contract there. And Drakenstein, I believe, if I recall, we were working on technology and film promotion. So all of those contracts are that kind of deeper level where we do individual kind of funded work for the municipality on a specific project. But they don't take away from either the work of the district unit, one level up, or the offer that we make to every municipality to help them with whatever we can within our resource constraints. Honourable Bartman, page 113, that insurance costs did go up, again, largely linked to the SEZ. Honourable America, you write about what happened on page 114 with the CMO. Judy Lane was with us for a short period of the year and handed over to Margie Whitehouse. So that's why those employment costs are split. On consulting fees, page 115, there were significant project consulting fees. If I recall, Atlanta's SEZ was about 12 million. We had just over 2 million for our one-stop shop that we do in conjunction with DDAT and SEZ and IDZ and all of our partners, including the DTI. There was a global tourism campaign of just over 2 million, and we ran another iteration of Project Good Hope, which is the investment sentiment campaign that also appears there. I've covered workshops and seminars, mostly the SEZ. I'll leave the next two to the CFO, but I'll point out which ones they are. And the last one for me is page 114, internal and external audits. Honourable America, that is how we structure our audit work at Wesgro. The external audit is done by the Auditor General. They used to outsource it to a third party, but now they do it themselves. And that is a fee that we pay them for producing the audit of these financials, for example. The internal audit fees are for our kind of internal partner. We're currently using BDO, who advise the audit committee and the staff on audit matters internally. So they're running tests, they're doing kind of bespoke audits, and they're doing the kind of audit risk work alongside us internally to help us prepare for the external audit. So that's why there are those two types of audit fees on page 114. So the CFO may be able to describe that more elegantly. I'll leave that if she wants to. Otherwise, CFO, I've got Honourable Nkondlo, contingent liabilities on page 117. Honourable Bartman, internal control deficiencies, and the question around contingent liabilities on page 117 and minimum payments linked to them from Honourable America. Over to you.
Thank you, CEO, and thank you, honourable members, for the questions. I'm going to start with the internal control issue relating to international supplier, the declaration of interest. As the AG had indicated, they did highlight this in the prior year, indicating that although we do obtain the declaration of interest from local suppliers, we also needed to do it for international suppliers. We implemented the control as of 1st of September 2019, but what they did select were items that fell before we implemented the control. So I can confirm that the control is currently in place and it is effective. So we do obtain declaration of interest for both local and international suppliers. And then moving on to page 1, maybe let me just talk in general around the consulting fees and the workshops and seminars and marketing. If you look at our notes are broken up into program expenses, which is the Wesgro expenses, and project expenses, which relate specifically to the projects. But what we have done further on page 126 is to do segment reporting, where in the prior year in 2019, if you look on page 127, you would see that Atlantis SEZ wasn't a major component of our expenditure and revenue. But if you look on page 126, we have included the Atlantis SEZ so that the members can see which costs specifically related to Atlantis SEZ that would have caused the variation. So we've shown it in 3 different places. So page 126 is where it's a lot easier for the members to follow that variation in different items. And on the workshops and seminars, the workshops and seminars actually decreased and against marketing. This was because of the strategy change alignment to the budget line. When Kulisa strategy was finished, once it had done its 5-year term, the new strategy, when it came to trade shows, the trade shows were aligned to a marketing cost component, and that's why it appears as though there's a swing between those 2 lines, because we are aligning to the new strategy. And going on to page 117, if you look at page 117, that note, now that I look at it, I can see why it could be misleading. It's covering 2 items, contingent liabilities and commitments. So the contingent liability, it's the current component where if we've got any surpluses that we would like to retain, us retaining this surplus funds is contingent against the approval of the provincial treasury. And every year when we do the audit, it's prior to us receiving approval of the retention of those surplus funds. So it's contingent upon us receiving the approval from the provincial treasury to retain those funds for the activities that were currently in progress as at year end. The component that is commitments, which is a prior year amount, there is a note at the bottom that highlights that prior year commitment was in relation to the purchase orders that were open, one relating to YPO and one relating to an Atlantis SEZ contribution towards work that Green Cape was doing. I think that, yeah, that covers all of the questions that were left, unless there's anything else, Mr. CEO.
No, I think that's it. Thank you very much, Koleka.
CFO? Hello? 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 Honorable members, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Chair, we can hear you.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can, Chair.
Oh, okay. The CFO, you finish?
Yes, I am done. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Yeah, you keep breaking up, eh? Yeah, okay. I see Honorable Nkondlo, your hands is up.
No, Chair, I wanted to indicate if you are going to give us follow-ups.
You want? Is there a follow-up, Honorable Nkondlo?
Yes.
Please go.
Okay, Chair, I'm not sure whether the AG still with us. Can I get an indication?
Remember, the AG normally sits throughout the meeting with us, eh? So they are in the meeting.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to confirm. I wanted to check in particular on the issue that the CFO of Wesgro was answering on now. That one, Chair, my question is, when the matter I raised it earlier on in the discussion with the AG, it was mentioned the issue of the non-disclosure, because I did ask whether it's something that had happened or that was a new occurrence, or it's something that has actually happened in the life of the audit. And I think it was mentioned that it was there before. So if that is the case, that's why I want to check if the Auditor General is here and I'm interpreting my understanding of their response correctly, because I would like to ask from the CFO if that was the issue. Why only the control measures were placed only when the matter now became an audit query? Because it is from what I'm making reference to from the response of the AG that this was something that was there and it was raised with Wesgro previously. And I would then, if I'm correct, then it will then mean it was not attended to until it became an audit query. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Honorable Ngondlo. CFO.
Oh, okay. I thought the AG was going to come in. It was attended to in the prior year audit when it became an audit query at that point. That's why I had referenced 1st of September 2019 as the date when we effected the control for international suppliers. So as of now, the control is in place, and it was a control that we had not implemented prior to September 2019, but it has been implemented since September 2019, which is a prior year audit. The financial year that we are dealing with is 1st of April 2019 to 31st of March 2020. So what the AG indicated is when they sampled the international supplier purchases that happened before September 2019, this was still identified as an exception. What we indicated to them, because these were repeat suppliers, is that we do have subsequent declaration of interest for the current year, but the indication was you can't apply a control subsequently. So the subsequent control would be applicable for the new financial year, but the declaration that we obtained in the prior year, they would still identify that as an exception, regardless of the same suppliers having done the declaration subsequently. Thank you.
Thank you very much, CFO, sorry. Any further question, honorable members? In the absence of question, there was just this one question, CEO, when we were having a briefing from the Auditor General, it was mentioned there was something to the effect that when it comes to procurement, there were some of the service providers or bidders, they did not actually comply in terms of the standard that is required. I think it was on the report of the AG, but it was something to do with procurement, whereby that some of those that were given tenders, they actually did not meet the prescribed, or they did not declare. What might have been the cause of that? I think it was at Wesgro. I'm just trying to look to the report now.
Chair, I think it's the same issue that the CFO is describing. That's the only thing I'm aware of.
Okay.
Yes, Chair, I can confirm that it is the same issue. And also what I need to highlight it might appear as though it's tenders. Because it's international suppliers, it was not tenders, it was procurements that happened to be in excess of 500,000 because of foreign exchange fluctuations. So it wasn't tenders, it was the normal procurements that we do in the normal order of business, where the expectation was we need to obtain declaration of interest from international suppliers. So it is the same issue that the honorable member is referring to.
Okay. No, thank you very much, CFO. Honorable members, are there any further questions? If there are no further questions, Honorable or Mr. Davids, were there any indication of members of the public that are present?
No, Chairperson. There were no indications from the members of the public to engage in the session.
Okay. So then, if there are no members of the public, I think in trying to round up the meeting, I just want to check whether the committee adding any points that they would like to raise in closing up, or the chairperson of the audit committee for the department, Mr. Rota.
No, Chair, I've got no further questions, Chair. Thank you.
And the chairperson of the audit committee of the IDZ.
No, Chair, it's Paul Slack, and I'm fine with the proceedings today. Thank you very much.
The chairperson of the audit committee of Wesgro. I think it's Mr. Green.
Chair, it's Michael Spicer here. I think Mr. Green has had to drop off the meeting, but
Okay.
he did indicate there were no questions from him.
No, excellent. Thank you very much. AG?
Thank you, Chairperson. Maybe just to confirm the last question that the members raised, that is correct what the entity responded to. And just to indicate from our side for the department and both the entities, we are looking forward for continued relationship with them, and the same with the committee. Thank you so much, Chair.
The CEO of the IDZ, are there any issues in closing that you'd like to raise?
No, Chair. No, thank you very much.
Wesgro CEO, are there any issues?
We are covered. Thank you very much, Chair.
HOD?
Chair, no, thank you very much. But I did want to take this opportunity, Chair, to thank this committee and all the members for your oversight role, for keeping us in check, and for helping us to deliver clean audits and to be in keeping with strong corporate governance. So thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, HOD. Thank you very much, and your team as well that accompany you. Thank you to Wesgro as well for availing yourself, as well as the ITZ. Thank you very much for availing yourself, to the audit committee of both entities, as well as to the Auditor General. Thank you very much for your continued presence, as well as your continued support in this work that we are doing of taking our oversight responsibility seriously towards those we are supposed to hold accountable. Thank you very much. We appreciate you for always being available, and then bear in mind that the question that we are asking to you are not questions where we are trying either to trick you or want to catch you up. It's just trying to make sure that we are actually holding those who are supposed to hold accountable to account. We are actually in the mission of actually executing our responsibility. Thank you very much. We have come now to the end of the meeting on this session. We would like to excuse you so that we can continue with the business of the committee. So while we are thanking you very much for your presence. You can be excused. The department, the audit and Auditor General, and the audit committee, as well as the entities. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Chair.
you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye.
Yes, honorable members, we are down from people in the meeting. So I want us to indicate if there are any resolution that we'd like to propose, Honorable Maseko.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted us to do the uniformity of the triple BEE and the local content.